Chosen one. They should have never come for you again. Someone is now considering giving up their practice and seeking help, and it all started the moment your energy shifted. Now they're panicking, questioning their sanity, searching for medication and explanations to numb what is actually divine judgment. They wanted you labeled unstable. Instead, they're the one trembling, spiraling, and losing grip. They targeted a chosen one. That was their fatal mistake. Before you even knew what you were, someone else recognized it, and they didn't celebrate it. They feared it. This figure in your life looked at you when you were young and saw something that terrified them. Not because you were bad, because you were too good, too bright, too much. You asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. You saw through lies before you had language for deception. You felt energies that other children couldn't detect. You were different in a way that threatened their entire structure. So they made a choice. And here's where the story gets dark. They picked between children. They actually sat down, either alone or with someone who practiced the same craft, and decided which child was expendable, which child could be offered up, which child would be the sacrifice that powered everyone else's prosperity. And you were chosen. Not because you were the least loved, because you were the most dangerous to their control. Your light was so bright it would eventually expose all their darkness. So they decided to bind it, to claim it, to marry you off to a spiritual spouse before you ever knew what was happening. Now catch this detail because it matters. When they performed this first ritual, you were spiritually asleep. You had no defenses up, no awareness of what was happening in the unseen realm. And that's exactly when they wanted to strike. Because once you woke up, once you started seeing, once you began understanding your own power, the contract would come up for review. They knew this. Someone warned them about this. Maybe their partner, maybe that elder they're now confiding in. Someone said to them clearly, once this child awakens, you won't be able to hold them, and they did it anyway. Why? Because they're addicted to control. Because they built their entire spiritual practice on your energy. You were their battery, their power source, the light they siphoned from to fuel their own craft, and they found justification for it. They called you rebellious. They said you needed to be dealt with. They convinced themselves this was for your own good. But the truth, they were jealous, threatened, afraid of what you'd become if you were left free to grow into your full power. So they bound you to an entity, a spiritual spouse, something that would follow you through life, making sure you never succeeded, never connected, never loved, never thrived. And it worked. For a long time it worked. Your relationships fell apart for no reason. Love felt like a curse. People who should have stayed left. Opportunities that should have opened stayed closed. You felt blocked at every turn. Paranormal activity followed you, and through all of it, this figure watched with satisfaction. Their ritual was effective. Their craft was working. You were contained, controlled, kept small, exactly as they planned. You were never theirs to offer. Before you were born, before you took your first breath, before this figure ever laid eyes on you, you were sealed, hidden in the Most High, marked, protected, set apart for a purpose that existed outside their jurisdiction. They thought they were binding your soul, but your soul was never on the table. It was never available for negotiation. Every contract they signed in the unseen realm, null and void from the beginning. Now this is crucial. This is where everything shifts, because for a long time it looked like their ritual worked. You struggled, you suffered, you felt the weight of that spiritual spouse following you everywhere. But what they interpreted as success was actually something else entirely. You were being trained, strengthened, prepared. Every obstacle they placed in your path was building spiritual muscle you'd need later. Every curse they threw at you was teaching you how to recognize spiritual warfare. Every binding they attempted was showing you exactly what freedom wasn't, so you'd recognize it when it finally came. See, they made a critical miscalculation. They assumed that because you were young and spiritually asleep when they performed the ritual, they had locked you in permanently. But there's a spiritual law they forgot, a law written into the fabric of reality itself. When you bind a chosen one, when you attempt to claim someone marked by the Most High, you trigger a countdown, an awakening sequence, and the very act of trying to suppress that person's light guarantees that when they do wake up, when they do see what happened to them, their power will be exponential. You don't just break free, you explode into liberation with force nobody anticipated. Your awakening wasn't gentle, it wasn't gradual, it was an earthquake. Everything they had hidden was suddenly visible. Every contract they'd signed without your consent was pulled up for review. Every binding they'd placed on you was exposed, and you were given a choice. Accept these agreements as valid, submit to what had been done to you, or reject it all. Break every chain, sever every cord, reclaim every piece of yourself they tried to steal. You chose freedom. You said no to every contract. You nullified every agreement. You broke every binding. And in that moment, they should have stopped. They should have recognized that you were no longer the spiritually asleep child they had offered up. You were awake, aware, dangerous, and trying to come for you again would be the biggest mistake they could make. But they didn't stop. That's the part that sealed their fate. Pride is one hell of a drug. Control is an addiction stronger than anything you can inject in your veins. They watched you break free. They saw you sever those contracts. They witnessed your awakening. And instead of accepting the loss, instead of recognizing they'd lost their grip, instead of understanding that continuing would bring consequences they couldn't handle, they doubled down. They went deeper. They performed a second ritual, a more invasive one, a darker one that required them to cross lines they'd never crossed before. See, the first binding happened when you were asleep. It was bad, but it had limits. The spiritual spouse could follow you. It could influence your life. It could block your blessings. But after your awakening, those bindings broke. That entity lost its claim, and they couldn't accept that. They needed you bound. They needed you controlled. They needed access to your energy to maintain their own spiritual stability. So they gave that spiritual spouse permission to break through physical barriers, to manifest in your actual space, to harm you directly, to harm the people around you. This wasn't just spiritual warfare anymore. This was physical invasion. This was them telling dark forces, do whatever you need to do to bring this person back under control. Break them, destabilize them, make them question their sanity, make them vulnerable again. Whatever it takes. If these words stirred your consciousness, hype this video to help more chosen ones awaken to this. When they performed that second ritual, when they forcibly broke through barriers that should never be broken, they didn't just come after you, they involved others. They sent people your way. Family members suddenly reaching out after extended silence, potential connections that seemed promising but felt slightly off. People in your community acting strange around you, all of it orchestrated, all of it angled, all of it designed to create pathways back to you, to make you drop your guard, to make you vulnerable to that second binding. Between your awakening and this moment of breakdown, there was a desperation phase. They tried everything, and I mean everything. They didn't perform 1 second ritual and call it done. No, they kept going, kept pushing. They tried different approaches because they could feel their grip slipping, they could feel their power draining, they could sense that something fundamental had shifted in the spiritual realm. They might have consulted other practitioners, they sought out people they thought had more power than them, they asked for help in binding what they couldn't bind alone. And here's what's wild, some of those practitioners probably warned them, probably said this person is protected. This person is sealed. This isn't something you should be messing with. But their pride wouldn't let them listen. Their ego wouldn't let them back down. Their addiction to control was too strong. So they escalated. Maybe they performed rituals at specific times they thought would be more powerful. Maybe they used items connected to you, photos, clothing, anything they could get their hands on. Maybe they tried to access you through your dreams, sending nightmares and disturbances to weaken your mental state. Maybe they worked through your relationships, planting seeds of discord, triggering arguments, creating situations designed to isolate you further. all of it intentional, all of it calculated, all of it part of a sustained campaign to break you back down to a state where you'd be bindable again. You felt the intensity of that period, the way attacks seemed to come from multiple directions, the way nothing felt stable, the way people you trusted suddenly seemed different, the way opportunities would appear and then dissolve, the way your mind felt under assault, the way your body felt exhausted for no physical reason. You were experiencing full-scale spiritual warfare, and you might not have even had language for what was happening. You just knew something was very wrong, but something in you recognized the trap. Some inner knowing said no. Some divine instinct kept you protected, and every attempt they made failed. Every person they sent got nowhere. Every angle they tried collapsed, and with each failure their desperation grew. Their spiritual stability started cracking. Their confidence in their craft started crumbling. Because if they couldn't bind you, if their rituals didn't work on you, then what did that say about everything they believed? What did that say about their power? Now we have arrived recently, at the moment I opened with, this person sitting in a counselor's office, and suddenly everything connects. What they're experiencing isn't just the failure of a ritual. This is two-layer deep karma, consequences stacking on consequences. The first layer, that's from the original binding they did when you were a child. That spiritual debt has been accumulating interest. But the second layer, that's from coming for you again after you awakened. That's from breaking through barriers they should never have touched. And karma, at that level, doesn't play. It doesn't give warnings. It comes like a flood, like everything built on stolen ground collapsing at once. Their spiritual stability, gone. Their confidence in their craft, shattered. Their ability to access the spiritual realm the way they used to, blocked. They're walking in darkness now, literal spiritual darkness. The lights went out. They're hearing things, they're feeling things, they're sensing things pressing in on them, and they have no idea what's happening because the very forces they manipulated are now manipulating them. Their relationships are ending, not just with you, with other children, other family members. People are finally seeing through the mask, finally recognizing the manipulation, finally distancing themselves. Funerals are happening, multiple funerals, people dropping around them, health issues manifesting in their own body, things breaking down that shouldn't be breaking down, their entire world falling apart in every direction simultaneously. And the counselor they're talking to, they have no framework for this. They're prescribing coping strategies for spiritual warfare they don't even believe exists. Remember how you were supposed to seek help from professionals who would tell you your spiritual experiences weren't real? Remember how you were supposed to be medicated and gaslit and convinced that what you were experiencing was all in your head? That's exactly what they're doing now. They're seeking psychiatric help. They're looking for therapists who will tell them none of it was real, that their craft was delusion, that spiritual consequences don't exist, that if they just take the right medication, maybe the haunting will stop. They're trying to renounce spirituality altogether. They're attempting to convince themselves that the time they spent practicing was meaningless, that the rituals they performed weren't real, that the entities they invoked don't actually exist. Because if none of it was real, then the consequences aren't real either, right? Wrong. You can't weaponize the unseen and then claim it doesn't exist when it turns on you. You can't bargain with forces beyond your understanding and then pretend you were just praying when the bill comes due. They wake up feeling watched, feeling presences they can't see but know are there, the same kind of presences they used to call on, the same kind of forces they used to direct. But now those forces aren't under their control. Now those entities are operating with their own agenda, and that agenda seems to involve making their life a living nightmare. They can't sleep without experiencing disturbances. They can't relax without feeling spiritual pressure. They can't even perform basic rituals without feeling threatened by what might show up. Their home doesn't feel safe anymore. Spaces that used to feel powerful now feel haunted. Items they used in their practice now trigger fear instead of confidence. They might have tried to get rid of these items, thrown them away, burned them, donated them, but the haunting doesn't stop, because the issue isn't the physical objects. The issue is the spiritual agreements they made, the contracts they signed when they thought they had power to control the consequences. Those agreements are still active, and the other parties to those agreements are collecting what they're owed. They can't talk about this with most people. They can't explain to friends or family why they're falling apart. They can't admit that the spiritual practices they either hid or dismissed publicly are now destroying them privately. So they isolate, they withdraw, they create distance from anyone who might see too clearly what's happening, and that isolation makes everything worse, because now they're alone with forces they can't control, alone with consequences they can't escape, alone with terror they can't rationalize away. Their craft isn't just failing on you, it's failing on everything. See, when you use spiritual practices to harm a chosen one, when you weaponize the unseen against someone under divine protection, it doesn't just create consequences for that one situation, it corrupts your entire spiritual connection. It's like a virus that spreads through everything you do. The rituals that used to work for them, not working anymore. The intuition they used to trust, giving them false information. The spiritual guidance they used to receive, either silent or actively misleading them. The protection they thought they had, gone. They're operating in the spiritual realm now like someone stumbling around in complete darkness. They can't see, they can't hear, they can't sense. Everything that made them feel powerful has been stripped away. And it gets worse. The spirits or entities they used to work with, those relationships are severed. Either those forces abandoned them or turned on them. Because here's what happens when you use spiritual power irresponsibly. The very forces you thought you controlled start controlling you. The entities you thought served you start demanding payment you can't afford. The practices you thought empowered you start draining you instead. It's a complete reversal, a total collapse of everything they built their identity on. So when they perform rituals now, nothing happens. Or worse, things happen that they didn't intend. Backfires, reversals, consequences they didn't anticipate. They might light a candle for one purpose and watch their life catch fire in another area. They might speak an intention and feel it boomerang back to them. They might call on forces that used to answer and get something else entirely, something that terrifies them. Their craft has turned into a minefield where every step could trigger an explosion. This is why they're seeking conventional help. This is why they're sitting with counselors and therapists, because they need someone to tell them that none of it was real, that spirituality is fake, that their practices were just psychological coping mechanisms, that what they're experiencing now is just stress or trauma or mental illness. They desperately want to believe that if they renounce the spiritual realm entirely, if they commit to a purely material worldview, maybe the haunting will stop, maybe the karma will end, maybe they can escape into rationalism and leave all of this behind. But you can't unring that bell. You can't open doors in the spiritual realm and then pretend they never existed. You can't make deals with forces beyond human understanding and then claim bankruptcy. The spiritual realm doesn't work that way. Once you engage at that level, once you practice at that depth, once you weaponize those powers, you're accountable, period. And no therapist, no psychiatrist, no conventional help can absolve you of spiritual debt. That has to be settled in the realm where it was created. Now let's talk about you, not the victim version they tried to create, the real you, the one they feared from the beginning. You're a frequency disruptor, a source of initiation. You carry something that automatically challenges darkness just by existing. You don't have to do anything special. Your presence alone shifts energy. Your truth alone exposes lies. Your light alone reveals shadows. And this isn't something you achieve. This is something you are. It's coded into your spiritual DNA. This is why the dark realm came for you early. It had to. Because once a chosen one fully awakens, once they step into their power, once they understand who they are, they become untouchable, uncontrollable, unstoppable. So the strategy is always to bind them young, to claim them before they know they can't be claimed, to convince them they're powerless before they realize they're powerful. It's the only play that ever works, and even then, it only works temporarily. You were always going to break free. It was written, sealed, guaranteed. The struggle wasn't about if you'd escape. It was about who you'd become in the process. Every curse they threw at you, it trained you to recognize spiritual warfare. Every binding they placed, it taught you what freedom feels like by showing you what it doesn't. Every attack they launched, it built spiritual muscle you didn't even know you needed. They were unknowingly preparing you, training you, forging you into exactly the kind of chosen one they should have feared from the start. Now let me put you onto something real. Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching chosen ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation and attacks while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app, it's declassified consciousness technology, the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. You don't need revenge. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to expose them publicly or wish them harm. All you need to do is exist in your freedom. That's it. Your liberation is their destruction. Your thriving is their torment. Your peace is their chaos. Because your existence proves that everything they believed about power was a lie. You're walking evidence that their craft has limits, that chosen ones can't be permanently bound. That divine protection is real, and they have to live with that knowledge eating them from the inside out. You're not a survivor, you're a conqueror. You're not recovering, you're ascending. You're not healing from what they did, you're expanding into what they tried to prevent. And every day you wake up free is another day they wake up in consequences. Every moment you choose peace is another moment they experience chaos. Every time you access your gifts without their interference is proof that they never had the power they thought they had. Your freedom is the most powerful statement you could ever make, and it's destroying them without you lifting a finger. This brings us to you, to what this moment means. You weren't crazy. Every instinct that told you something was working against you, correct. Every feeling that your struggles weren't normal, accurate. Every sense that there was a spiritual component, right on target. You weren't paranoid. You weren't imagining things. You were perceiving reality that others couldn't see. And now that reality is being confirmed in the most undeniable way possible, their breakdown is your proof. Their seeking help is your validation. Their questioning of their craft is your vindication. Because if nothing was happening, if you were making it all up, if spiritual warfare wasn't real, then why are they falling apart? Why are they experiencing consequences that conventional therapy can't explain? Their crisis confirms your truth. Their collapse validates your perception. Their terror proves you were right all along. You spent a long time doubting yourself, wondering if you were seeing things that weren't there, questioning whether your struggles were really caused by spiritual interference or if you were just failing at life. You endured gaslighting, mockery, dismissal, people telling you that you were paranoid, that you needed therapy, that you should stop believing in spiritual nonsense. But you knew, deep in your core, you knew something else was at play, and now the universe is confirming it, not through words, not through someone finally believing you, but through the collapse of the person who did it, through karmic consequences that can't be explained away. through spiritual mathematics that demand balance. You don't need anyone's validation anymore. Reality itself is validating you. The universe itself is confirming you. Divine justice itself is proving you were right. So let this sink in. You're not recovering from their abuse. You're ascending past it. You're not healing from their manipulation. You're expanding beyond it. You're not piecing together a life they shattered. You're stepping into a destiny they could never touch. Everything they did to limit you, it failed. Everything they tried to bind, it broke. Everything they attempted to steal, it's returning to you multiplied. Your relationships aren't cursed anymore. Your path isn't blocked anymore. The spiritual spouse they married you to, gone. The entities they gave access to, expelled. The contracts they signed, voided. You're operating in freedom you've never experienced before, and that freedom is revealing capacities within you that couldn't emerge while you were fighting battles you didn't even know existed. Now let me paint a picture of what's opening up for you. First, relationships, real ones, the kind that don't mysteriously fall apart for no reason. The kind where people see you clearly and love what they see. The kind where connection doesn't feel like a battle, because that spiritual spouse that was blocking you, that entity that was sabotaging every connection, it's gone. Which means the people who are meant to be in your life can actually find you now, can actually stay, can actually build with you. You're about to experience what love feels like when it's not being interfered with, what friendship feels like when it's genuine, what partnership looks like when it's divinely aligned. Second, opportunities, the ones that kept slipping through your fingers, they're coming back around, but better, more aligned, more powerful, because you're not the same person anymore. You've been forged in fire, you've broken chains, you've survived spiritual warfare most people don't even believe exists. So the opportunities coming to you now are calibrated for who you've become, not who you were. They're bigger, they require the strength you built during those hard times, they demand the wisdom you gained from recognizing manipulation, they need the discernment you developed from being attacked. Third, your gifts. Oh, your gifts. The abilities that were always inside you but couldn't fully emerge because so much of your energy was being siphoned. They're about to explode. You're about to discover things about yourself that shock you, intuitive hits that are frighteningly accurate, creative outputs that flow effortlessly, solutions to problems that appear fully formed, healing abilities you didn't know you possessed, teaching capacity that draws people to you, leadership qualities that make others want to follow. All of it was always there. It was just buried under spiritual interference, but the interference is gone now. Fourth, your purpose, that thing you were born to do, that mission that felt blocked at every turn. The path is clearing rapidly, because you were never supposed to do your life's work while bound. You were never meant to fulfill your purpose while being spiritually attacked. The universe was protecting your calling by not letting you step into it while you were still under assault, because if you had, they would have corrupted it, they would have twisted it, they would have used your own purpose against you. But now you're free, now you're protected, now you're ready, and your purpose is about to unfold in ways that make up for lost time. They might reach out, or they might send people to reach out for them. They might present themselves as changed, reformed. Seeking help means they're trying to get better, right? They might use their breakdown as evidence of transformation, and you might feel something pull at you. Guilt, obligation, that old programming that says you should be the bigger person, that you should help family in crisis. Let me be clear, their crisis is not your responsibility. Their fear does not create your obligation. Their consequences are not yours to fix. You don't owe them rescue. You don't owe them comfort. You don't owe them access to your peace, your energy, or your space. What you owe yourself is protection. What you owe your freedom is honor. What you owe your awakening is to never go back to sleep just because someone else wants you unconscious again. Here's what they're really seeking. Not healing, not transformation, not genuine change. They're seeking relief from consequences without accountability. They want the karma to stop without acknowledging what they did. They want the spiritual warfare to end without admitting they started it. They want you to save them from the results of their own choices, and if you do, if you let them back in, you become complicit in your own rebinding. You participate in your own limitation. You volunteer for the chains you just broke free from. You help them best by staying free. You show them the most truth by maintaining your boundaries. You teach them the most valuable lesson by refusing to participate in their drama. Your freedom is the evidence they need to see. Your thriving is the testimony they need to witness. Your peace is the proof that their power was always limited. So when they reach out, you have full permission to say no, full authority to maintain your distance, full rights to protect your peace. Their breakdown doesn't obligate you. Their seeking help doesn't require your participation. The universe is handling it. Divine justice is managing it. Divine justice is managing it. Your only job? Stay free, stay rising, stay becoming everything they tried to prevent you from being. They won't admit publicly that their craft failed, but there are signs, patterns you'll notice if you're paying attention. And these signs matter because they confirm that what you broke free from is truly broken, that the power structure that held you is truly dismantled. First sign, they'll distance themselves from anything openly spiritual. If they used to display certain items, they're putting them away. If they used to participate in certain communities, they're quietly leaving. If they used to speak confidently about their practices, they're suddenly silent. This isn't growth. This is fear. They're trying to sever ties with the spiritual realm because engaging with it now brings pain instead of power. They're attempting to hide from forces they can't control, running from consequences they can't escape. Second sign, they'll embrace hyper-rationalism. Suddenly, everything has a scientific explanation. Everything can be explained through psychology or biology or sociology. They'll mock spiritual thinking. They'll dismiss anything metaphysical. They'll align themselves loudly with materialist worldviews. And they'll do it with the fervor of someone trying to convince themselves, because if they can believe spirituality is fake, maybe their spiritual consequences are fake too. If they can reduce everything to brain chemistry, maybe karma is just a cultural superstition. It's denial dressed up as intellectualism. Third sign, they'll project their terror onto others. They'll warn people away from spiritual practices. They'll call practitioners dangerous or delusional. They'll speak about spirituality with disgust or fear. And while that might look like wisdom or concern, it's actually them processing their own trauma. They engaged with spiritual forces, got destroyed, and now they're terrified of anyone else doing the same. But they can't admit what really happened, so they externalize it. Make it about protecting others when they're really trying to process their own devastation. They should have never come for you. Not the first time, definitely not the second time. They should have recognized what you were. They should have understood that chosen ones don't stay bound. They should have known that souls hidden in the Most High can't be claimed by darkness, but they didn't know. Or they knew and tried anyway, and now they're paying the price for spiritual arrogance they can't undo. And you're not the person they tried to create. You're not the victim they wanted you to believe you were. You're not the broken, cursed, limited version they tried to bind you into. You're the frequency disruptor who breaks chains just by waking up. You're the source of initiation who shifts reality just by existing. You're the chosen one who walked through fire and came out wielding it. Everything they did to stop you, it prepared you. Everything they tried to bind, it trained you. Everything they attempted to steal, it's returning to you multiplied with interest the universe calculates. This is your moment, not of revenge, of reclamation, not of confrontation, of confirmation, not of looking back, of stepping forward into everything that's been waiting for you. Because all that time you spent fighting spiritual warfare you didn't understand, it built capacity. All those relationships that mysteriously failed, they cleared space for connections that can actually honor who you are. All those blocked opportunities, they delayed you until you were strong enough to handle what's coming. And what's coming is massive. Your gifts are about to manifest at levels you've never experienced. Your purpose is about to accelerate in ways you can't predict. Your influence is about to expand in directions you didn't imagine. Because you've been operating at a fraction of your capacity. You've been running with weights attached. You've been seeing through interference. But the weights are off now. The interference is gone. The chains are broken. And you're about to discover what you're actually capable of when nothing is holding you back. So let them sit in that counselor's office. Let them seek psychiatric help. Let them try to renounce the spiritual realm they weaponized against you. Let them question their sanity. Let them experience the confusion they wanted for you. Let them walk in the darkness they tried to trap you in. Because while they're collapsing under the weight of their own karma, you're rising. While they're seeking relief from consequences they created, you're stepping into blessings they can never touch. While they're questioning whether any of their power was real, you're discovering that your power was always real, always protected, always destined to emerge. They're considering giving up their practice. You're just beginning yours. They're seeking help to escape spiritual consequences. You're accessing help from the Most High, who never left you. They're trying to convince themselves that none of it matters. You're living proof that all of it matters. That spiritual warfare is real. That chosen ones are real. That divine protection is real. That karma is real. That justice is real. That you were always meant to win this. Welcome to your real life, to your actual power, to the destiny that was always yours but was being blocked by someone who had no right, no authority, no legitimate claim. They tried twice, they failed twice, that now they're facing consequences so severe they're questioning everything they ever believed about power. And you're just getting started. Everything that was delayed is accelerating. Everything that was hidden is being revealed. Everything that was blocked is opening. Then nothing, not their rituals, not their entities, not their desperation, not their craft, nothing can stop what's coming for you now. And this chosen one is just the beginning of what the universe has in store for you. The beginning of the real story, the one they tried to prevent, the one you were always meant to live, the one that starts now, with them breaking in that counselor's office while you break through into everything you were created to be.